All right, so it's time for a new episode. We're doing this as a weekly show, so we're going to have it come out every Tuesday or Wednesday, ideally. And much to discuss. Donald Trump Jr. has arrived in Greenland. He's posting selfies and videos on social media. And the locals there seem to be taking a liking to the Trump team that's arrived. And this shows Trump is serious about trying to acquire Greenland, probably as a buffer against Russia, and possibly as a staging ground for any military operations in the future. Or maybe he just wants the natural resources of Greenland, or a little of both. Maybe the explanation is a little of both. In other news, the Orbs and drone sightings over New Jersey continue, albeit in a more muted way, as people seem less shocked now by all of it. But it's a very strange story, and it's one to keep an eye on in 2025 for sure. The suspected Cybertruck bomber, who was former U.S. military, emailed some kind of manifesto to a couple of big podcasts before his death, in which he speculated the orbs or drones are actually Chinese, quote, gravitic propulsion, whatever that means. And that if the public didn't understand the nature of these things, it could pose a grave threat to the entire country. Of course, his claims have to be taken with a grain of salt. This is just some guy's manifesto, and probably not a mentally well guy if that's how he went out. In other news, aside from that, AI is going full steam ahead. NVIDIA just released their Grace Blackwell chip, or announced it. And this would make a desktop computer possible for only around $3,000, which would be approximately 900 or 1,000 times more powerful than the average laptop today. So think about that. Something for $3,000 that looks like a desktop and is 1,000 times more powerful than the average laptop being sold today. And so this thing is so powerful, in fact, that you can now run a large language model, or an LLM. You can run one of these LLMs locally for your business or personal needs. Pretty wild when you think about it. This is like having an analytical genie, an artificial intelligence genie right in your house or office without needing to connect to the cloud or pay a subscription service to do your AI tasks for you. Absolutely amazing. And so NVIDIA leading there with more innovation. Of course, I think quantum computing remains the new frontier. I think it's only a matter of time before AI apps and stuff start to run in limited quantum environments. And so we're going to talk a lot about quantum computing this year on the podcast. We'll cover that. And we'll get some experts on here to hopefully explain to you the potential and how the technology differs from all traditional computing, why it's such a big deal. So the show in general is going to be guests as much as possible, and we'll still maintain the news format. But on weeks like today where we don't have a guest planned, we just give you the biggest stories and try not to waste your time. And I think we'll carve out a strong niche here, because some of the big podcasts that we're going to be competing with are literally 2 or 3 hours long. Some of them even longer than that. And who has the time for all that? And meanwhile, the mainstream news podcasts are just really lame, and they regurgitate all the same stuff you could find on just like an Associated Press feed or something. And they aren't doing a good job of sifting through what's interesting or not interesting. So they wouldn't mention, for example, the ongoing Orbs sightings at all, because that's no longer in vogue, right? It was cool 2 weeks ago. It's still happening. People are still posting videos on TikTok about these unexplained sightings all over the mid-Atlantic, but mostly in New Jersey. And there's no real official answer. And of course, this Cybertruck bomber, I don't think he should be the expert on this, because again, he doesn't have that much credibility if that's how he went out of this world, was blowing himself up. So, and of course, we don't even have confirmed details on that yet. We don't know exactly what happened. But that is this week's episode. So feel free to give us a review over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leaving a review will help us skyrocket toward the top. And next month, I'm going to be having a guest on who is a comedian who interviewed me about 12 years ago in Los Angeles. And she's had a full career since then. And she randomly reached out to me because she wanted a copy of our podcasts from those 12 years ago. Of course, I don't keep archives for that long. But I said, why don't we do an update show? 12 years later, here's how everything worked out for both of us. And so it should be a lot of fun. So she'll be on next month. And again, I'm trying to lasso some quantum computing experts so that you guys can figure out how big this thing is. And of course, Bitcoin, the other story I want to mention, Bitcoin broke $102,000 a coin yesterday. Today, at least as of right now, it's down a little bit, 97,000 something. But the fact that it went up that high and that it stayed there for a little while, stayed above 100K at least, I think is a massive credibility boost and shows the strength of that network in particular. Right? To go above $100,000 a coin means that early adopters and miners and stuff like that are choosing not to dump out on new entrants, but are instead choosing to believe in this new currency. And every millisecond that it's above, $100,000 is just more credibility, because the legacy media has to cover it to some extent. They have to cover that success. And the people who've held the ETFs since last year, they've seen such a gain in their portfolios that, if not word of mouth, at least these people are satisfied enough that I don't see them dumping out either. And so it creates this environment where Bitcoin, in my humble opinion, not financial advice, it could go very high indeed, especially if Trump continues to support it with his rhetoric, if not legislation. I think it could go very high indeed, just because it is rare. At the end of the day, it is rare, and something like 92% of them have already been mined into existence, and the remaining 8% get created over the next century or something. So when the whole world wants it, it becomes insanely rare. And right now it seems like there are pockets of people and communities who value it very much, but the whole world doesn't value it yet. And on the internet, it's still surprising how few websites work with it, given how easy it is to send a Bitcoin payment. It's surprising how few e-commerce websites actually accept it. And there's some kind of bridge between how much money's in it and how usable it is right now, right? So clearly there's a lot of people hoping this becomes the future. And if inflation is the problem, Bitcoin is the solution. And we could say gold's the solution, but it's really not, because they're always finding new gold. And gold is terrible as a payment method. It's heavy to transport. You need to insure it. You need security beyond a certain point. You need to rent people with machine guns, basically, to protect your gold. It's an absolute terrible payment method, and an even worse store of value. It's a worse store of value than it is a payment method. And here Bitcoin comes along, truly rare digital money, and it solves a problem that we didn't all know there was a solution to. Again, if the problem is inflation, that there's always more money being created, and the solution is Bitcoin. So that's it, and I'll hear from you guys next week. You'll hear from me. Be sure to be subscribed on your favorite podcast player and turn notifications on in case there's any breaking news. We'll come out with something before next week, of course. There's no law that says we can only release one episode per week. That's just going to be the average. All right. Thank you, guys.